Hello, greetings. Welcome to Attaining the Second Cognition. This is Doug Michael. Thank you once again for taking your time and joining me, ladies and gentlemen. Good to be spending time with you again. And ladies and gentlemen, we've gone to great lengths in our video presentations to show how the concept of the divine in any form is nothing but a cognitive trap of submission to a fabricated belief system not of human design. We have fully explained the nature of the Hapim mind virus and how it has controlled our consciousness since our species was created. We have also gone to great lengths to present the large overview of how this has come about at the hands of the ancient gods and how the inorganic hive mind of the cosmic Hapim collective has kept humanity subservient throughout the ages with all of their doctrines of divine submission. The theme of this presentation is destroying spiritual myths, ascension, abundance, and material gain. Wherever you turn in the religious and mystical circus, you are confronted with concepts of the alleged divine coupled with the word sacred. You find sacred sites, sacred mushrooms, sacred texts, sacred geometry, sacred temples, sacred space for one's meditation, sacred, sacred, sacred. We have sought to bust the bubble of the divine illusion from many different angles, but we have not specifically taken on the word sacred. Every religious belief on the planet, even down to those embraced by indigenous peoples, is loaded with one sacred something or another, without fail. There are absolutely no exceptions to the idea of something, somewhere, sometime being sacred. In ancient times, when the Anunnaki ruled the earth as our godly overlords, sacred simply meant off-limits. The sacred places were the property of these god pretenders, and lowly humans better not have violated these off-limits restrictions of the gods' sacred precincts under penalty of death. Sacred temples were nothing more than the Beverly Hills mansions of the gods, and unless you were one of their chosen servants, you had absolutely no right as a human being to tread on their property, no different than the mansions of the Hollywood stars and the elite to this day. Sacred simply meant that some tyrannical god said, "That is mine, and you better not touch it, or you're committing a sin." It is from this selfish designation of property confiscation by these ancient gods that we get the word sacrilege, which means violation or misuse of what is regarded as sacred. From sacrilege, we see other words of prohibition for violating the designated property of the gods, like desecration, profanity, blasphemy, impiety, irreligion, unholiness, irreverence, disrespect, profanation. Damn, ladies and gentlemen, that sure is a lot of restrictions, isn't it? Prohibitions of humans using the resources of their own planet because the gods greedily said, "That's mine." So these off-world pastoralists had their sacred temples and their sacred groves, their sacred animals and their sacred beehives, their sacred garments in the form of priestly or royal robes, and their sacred pickaxes, their sacred wells, and on the list goes. With this understanding, do you really want to use the word sacred in anything you do where advancing your own soika is concerned? To bend your will to the sacred only means you are a slave to divine restrictions, so we have to ask, how sacred is sacred? Within the New Age, we see an extension of these ages-old religious beliefs in the sacred spread wholesale across the spectrum, and it permeates theosophical thinking at every turn. Divine this and sacred that is the mainstay of the entire belief system. When people ask us, "Do you find nothing sacred?" our answer is a resounding hell no. To accept something as sacred means that you are accepting restrictions. At this point in time, I can think of two no more despicable words to roll off my tongue than sacred or divine. The stink of tyranny that these words embrace is beyond acceptance. Perhaps some people are thinking, well, you put out a copyright and trademark notice staking claim to your work. How is that not sacred? Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you cannot distinguish how our protecting our work is different than the sacred of their bullshit, then you ain't getting it. How it is different, the sacred of the gods, was compelled performance. Our stuff is take it or leave it. We aren't shoving our work down your throats at every turn. You have the choice to come to our channel and listen to what we have to say or not. You have the choice to contemplate our perspectives that we're sharing or not. Do you have the choice to dance on their sacred ground or not? No, you don't. It's forbidden. We don't think we are gods, and we don't tell you that not listening to us is a sin, and therein lies the difference. We have no God within. We are just regular average people living a regular average life. Within the New Age spiritual mythology, the tyranny of the sacred and the divine lies beyond every turn. If you look up the definition of both divine and sacred, they both have strictly religious definitions. You can pursue no avenue of personal advancement that isn't poisoned by these two words, and if you are gauging your Soika pursuits on the thought of yourself being divine or sacred, you are still bending a knee to God or some overarching consciousness outside of you. You aren't even allowed to be your own true self without the fucking word divine intruding as your divine self. Seriously, ladies and gentlemen, how cognitively destructive is that when you are seeking to become a self-aware, fully functional human becoming? With the divine and the sacred being a cellular program of godhood as the measure of your worth, you are nothing but a piece of chattel to the God concept and still catering to the idea and allowing it to continue to rule your consciousness. It is the most sublime form of cognitive tyranny imaginable, yet people embrace this thinking that it gives them some sort of spiritual edge by professing their devotion to the principles of the divine and sacred. Let's just be honest and dispense with the words divine and sacred and simply admit that we are slaves. That at least removes all the illusions about divine and sacred with a simple yet very ugly truth. How long do you intend to be a slave to the sacred and the divine? The inorganic, hive, ascended so-called masters have worked tirelessly to ensure that every time a crew member sought to advance themselves when they were seeking answers on their personal journeys, they were met at every turn with this inorganic formulated divine and sacred BS. I'm going to start laying out this deception with the whole idea about ascension. We have brought ascension up in some of our other presentations and how the concept of ascension sprang from the mind of Madame Blavatsky at the insistence of her inorganic imposter, Kut Humi. All this shit about other dimensions and their only being reached through theosophical rituals of initiation is some of the worst hogwash the inorganics ever spread on this planet, and at its core lies the concept of ascension to the fifth dimension. This fifth dimension ascension hogwash has so permeated New Age thinking that one can't tell a New Ager that it's all a contrived scam without being vitriolically accused of being negative, which is about the most powerful a pejorative that these indoctrinated slaves can utter to another person. These indoctrinated believers in the New Age can apparently accept the corruption of tyranny taking place all around the planet, but the only gumption they can muster to defend their spiritual turf is to call someone negative. And you wonder why the tyrants are having such a field day with these docile acolytes. I'll post a link in the description section that illustrates certain energetic experiences that people who are seeking to advance may have experienced over the years that they may have encountered. I'm not suggesting that every symptom listed at this website is necessarily a sign of energetic awakening, but much of it is valid from an energetic standpoint, but that doesn't mean their ideas of what these symptoms are is correct or even in the ballpark of truth. Where the car of understanding veers off the road of legitimacy is with the theosophical inorganic spin telling people that this symptomatology automatically means it is leading to fifth dimensional ascension. The experiences and symptomatology are in many cases very real, but when one goes seeking information on what is occurring with them energetically, all they can find as an answer is Ascended Master BS doctrines like fifth dimensional ascension claptrap. Is it any wonder that no one can find their way out of the inorganic cognitive maze when they are met at every turn with theosophical spiritual disinformation? The real problem with all of this lies in the fact that so few question the bullshit they are told, reaching their own conclusions in the alternative, but rely instead on these cosmic hive con artists to tell them what their experiences should mean, not what they actually might portend in the alternative. This is nothing more than giving way to the authority syndrome produced by the hive hucksters in the present generation. Many of these energetic symptoms are real, ladies and gentlemen, but how many of you have been waiting around for some kind of magical transition to take place and whisk you away to this inorganic, fifth-dimensional fabricated reality? Point me to one person in history that has transitioned to the fifth dimension and come back to tell the tale that this hogwash is remotely real or valid. My money says you can't do it because it's all a gigantic cognitive hoax. This idea about ascension is just the modern repackaging of the Christian rapture myth made up by John Darby in 1830. This theme of some kind of heavenly rescue preys on the consciousness of fearful people, and the ascension doctrine is the same thing sold to a new audience without a Christian spin on it. It's all the same shit, ladies and gentlemen. Those who bought into the bullshit belief of the rapture weren't content to settle for the rapture concept, so others started formulating ideas about the fear of the biblical tribulation. Those most fearful of these tribulation beliefs came up with the idea of the pre-tribulation rapture because it gave them the cognitive comfort in the belief that God would come whisk them away before the war and tribulation came about. This pre-tribulation rapture theme is what is behind the Left Behind series of books and TV shows, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, you better get your life straight with God, or you will be left behind when the pre-tribulation rapture takes place. It's all fear-mongering designed to herd people into their churches praying to escape the turmoil that mankind presently faces. This type of paranoid escapism is no different than the escapism of the ascension myth. To demonstrate this mentality, I recently came across this cute little passage on a popular social networking site. It reads, "I want to say something about the spirituality debate. You don't believe in God? That's okay, but why is it so important for many of you to mock those of us that do? If we're wrong, what have we lost when we die? Nothing. How does our faith in Jesus Christ bring you any harm? You think it makes me stupid, gullible, ignorant? That's okay too. How does that affect you? If you're wrong, your consequence is far worse. I would rather live my life believing in God and serving Him and find out I was right than not believe in Him and not serve Him and find out I was wrong. Then it's too late. Ain't no shame in my game. I believe in Jesus Christ. He said, 'Deny me in front of your friends, and I will deny you in front of my Father.'" This is an example of defending one's cognitive turf. Notice the word serve. Notice how the writer takes the questioning of their beliefs personally. Do you notice the veiled threats? This mentality demonstrates the idea of an insurance policy, whereas I may as well just be a cognitive slave to this belief just in case, so that Big Daddy won't spank me for disobedience. The writer asks, how does our faith in Jesus Christ bring you any harm? Notice the word our. My question would be, if your faith is so unshakable, how does my questioning it bring you any harm? What kind of all-knowing, all-loving God would condemn His beloved children to burn in agony for all of eternity simply for disbelief in ages-old doctrines forced upon the populace by a tyrannical and thoroughly corrupted institution? Bend your knee, fawn at my feet, and serve me. Thanks, but no thanks. I'll take my chances. How is it that billions still cling on to these mythical doctrines of fear and dependency after all of these centuries? To me, it demonstrates how little human consciousness has actually advanced. Serve me or burn. These disempowering concepts should be relegated to the Stone Age where they belong. Another one of the big New Age myths is that of abundance. This materialist bullshit wrapped in spiritual gibberish is another great deceiver to the spiritually hungry public. Many that buy into it seem to confuse abundance with luxury. The abundance doctrine is hooked to the manifestation doctrine like Siamese twins. You can't separate one from the other because it is all nothing but a first cognition, Hapeem-oriented scam. The ultimate goal of these doctrines is to keep people forever spinning their wheels and getting nowhere, all the while thinking that if they can use the special secret tools of mystical manifestation, that they can make themselves rich, find their elusive, mythical twin flame, and become abundant in the materialist sense of greed and self-gratification. All the theosophical formulators of this doctrine had to do was wrap it in some spiritual swill, and they had a bestseller with The Secret, with their roadshow salesmen raking in money hand over fist from the seminars attended by gullible, first cognition people looking for a magical fix to their lives. I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this shit doesn't work. Obviously, people are hungry for something more because that book and its cheapening of a very real truth has sold over 19 million copies. With regard to this twin flame nonsense, it's just another way of saying significant other or other half. I would suggest becoming whole unto yourself and finding another whole person to grow together with if that's your desire. Think of the concept. I'm incomplete, so you make me feel whole because I need something outside of myself to complete me. And we wonder why so many relationships fail. I ask you to sit back and analyze this abundance doctrine with genuine objectivity to see it for the spiritual scam that it is. All you have to do is believe our shit and waste your time based on your individual greed to live the lives of the rich and famous. It totally plays on the human greed factor, and every bit of the focus is on material wealth, hiding behind the mask of alleged spiritual secrets. But no, it's spiritual, don't you know? How dare you challenge my bullshit magical belief system and expose the man hiding behind the curtain? How many of you, through the manifesting movement, wasted a lot of time and energy and money trying to manifest lots of money or personal wealth because you had the lame idea that if you had all the money in the world, you'd have the time to devote yourself fully to your divine spirit path and not have to deal with 3D issues, then waiting impatiently to begin your spiritual pursuits when you manifested winning the lottery? We've done this, and we can tell you from experience, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the most pernicious mindsets that derails your cognitive advancement. Money will not make you more cognitively advanced. Money will not broaden your perspective, and you don't have to completely remove yourself from your everyday life to do it. That is only a happy fantasy fueled by simple human greed and played upon by theosophy and its doctrinaires and fully endorsed by the New Age. Reiki and yoga do the same thing. They both cater to the bragging rights of Happy-controlled people who only want to be special in comparison to those lowly humans who don't embrace their particular brand of hollow, spiritual Happy gratification. Now, before anyone takes offense, I'm not picking on people who practice yoga as a means to keep their body in shape. In fact, I've been to a few classes and have found it to be very beneficial in that regard. It's great exercise. What I can't stand is the holier-than-thou pretentiousness that seems to go along with it with many people. You know, the ones that lift themselves up on a pedestal and view you as somehow less than for not practicing it. What if my exercise choice happens to be Tai Chi or running on the treadmill at the gym? Is that somehow less spiritual or not as good? How many practitioners are even aware that as a spiritual practice, this exercise was brought to the West by theosophists seeking to incorporate yet another system under their umbrella? Why not simply practice it for the benefit it can give you and embrace it in that regard with some humility? I've witnessed this same pretentiousness with vegans and vegetarians as well. I'm including links to 2 humorous videos in the description section to demonstrate what I'm talking about. Now, I will say that I don't particularly care what your dietary choices may be, whether you are a junk food king or a vegetarian, but when you turn veganism into some kind of spiritual badge of honor, your Happim is having a field day with your consciousness. These New Agers, Neo-Buddhists, Neo-Hindus, Neo-Shamans, and every other brand of superficial flake present in the modern spiritual soup made up of theosophical Fabian nonsense are just as tiresome and recalcitrant as any Christian or Muslim in defending their beliefs. It is all superficial nonsense, and there is not one bit of it that will lead you to true, pragmatic, cognitive freedom as a fully functional human being operating strictly from your soika, your primary consciousness. Another thing I'd like to point out is this whole nonsensical idea of judge not. Many proponents of New Age thinking will actually proclaim that everything is perfect and as it should be, and we shouldn't judge. This is such BS because we need to make valid judgments all the time. As an example, let's suppose a registered child molester moves into the vacant house next to where you live. You are going to have to make a judgment as to whether or not you are going to allow your kids anywhere near that creature. Where this judge not idea makes sense is in not making superficial judgments based on a person's appearance or what they do for a living, what their social status is, or what their dietary or exercise choices happen to be. There is a major difference. Also, this New Age idea that everything is just fine is a total cop-out. Adherence to this ridiculous notion exhibits a delusional, fear-based mentality embraced by those who cannot or will not face the situation that surrounds us. It displays cognitive immaturity, and it simply is not healthy to turn a blind eye to the negative. Every one of these ideas and concepts, whether it is implied within the superficial dress-up with the tie-dyed, errant, hippie-era New Age wannabes to burning candles and meditating in your sacred space, is all fictional nonsense. There is no real power in any of these exhibitions of happy satisfaction. If you think that a bunch of people dressing alike and following each other around, professing pre-designed and formulated religious or mystical platitudes is going to lead you to cognitive freedom, you're going to be disappointed. You are simply being led by the nose at the hands of your cognitive controllers. They designed the doctrines. They designed the bogus rituals. They designed the alleged initiations. They profess the mysteries, and in the final tally, they are going to give you nothing in return for all of your smarmy, Hapeem-oriented, greedy devotion to their shit. We are never going to cognitively advance as a species so long as we place reliance on ancient systems created by our cognitive slave masters. We will never be able to break ourselves from their cognitive tyranny of always looking backward to and repeating ancient traditions seeking to find anything new. We will only remain roped into their cognitive corrals, repeating their beliefs, repeating their rituals, and always expecting to find something magical in their promises and expectations that never in our entire history has given our species a single fucking thing except more divine and sacred dependency on their bullshit. They peddle false hopes and false expectations that never manifest. Oh, they may make you feel good for a while and might actually make you feel like you are progressing spiritually, but in the end, the results are never long-lasting if you are looking to know more, looking to become more, and especially looking for cognitive freedom. If you are comfortable in their love-gilded energetic cage, you will never understand this. They peddle doctrines of escapism and fictitious rewards if you will only allow them to dictate what to think, how you should think, and most important of all, rely on them for every answer to your life. This includes using their information to formulate your perceptions of your experiences. You can't become a cognitively aware, fully sovereign human being so long as you demand to dance to the tunes of their fiddler, ladies and gentlemen. We can't continue to do the same religious and mystical shit as the ancients, which has not worked throughout the ages, and expect a different result. That is insanity. There is nothing the Cosmic Consortium, and that includes their off-world Anunnaki collaborators, as well as their human Aryan store minders, have given us, that will ever lead this species to genuine freedom. So long as we rely on their divine and sacred bullshit, we will be ever restricted from realizing our true potential as a species, and this is why they have worked so tirelessly to keep us from discovering that potential. You will never find your own potential, your own soika, your own primary consciousness, so long as you keep depending on them to define what your experiences may mean. They established your cognitive filtering system, and so long as you use their systems of cognitive misinterpretation, you are never going to come up with the right answer. You are only going to reach the conclusions they want you to reach so they can continue to control your mind and your very perception of reality. If you truly want cognitive freedom, you're going to have to remove these limited and strangling perceptual filters. Until you do, you will only be looking at an out-of-focus reality, and it is the divine consortium who controls the lens of the focus mechanism. To see the clear picture fully in focus, you have to remove the fuzziness of their limited projections on the screen of your reality and focus to make the picture your picture, not theirs. There are a lot of sensitive people out there that do have clairaudience traits, people referred to as psychics, and because of this trait, they are able to communicate with higher dimensional entities. A lot of these imposters pass themselves off as ascended masters or some archangel or some god of mythology. There are also other people that do not have this trait that have received communication from these masters and angels through the form of automatic writings. This type of phenomenon is the hallmark of the New Age and Theosophy. Think about it, ladies and gentlemen. The whole Theosophy movement was created by humans catering to the whims of these ascended masters, channeling their doctrines, and people have lapped it up for well over a century. If you do your research into channeled messages, here is what you'll find most of the time without fail. The channeler asked for some divine guidance. The messages contain smarmy, hapim-stroking words to let the channeler know how special they are and to manipulate their emotions. The messages are a cookie-cutter approach from one channeler to the next. All of these messages are designed to make the channeler and the people that embrace these messages go, ooh, ah, how divine, and give them an emotional feeling that there is some divine hand guiding their fate. It is going to lead you to rapture, to ascension, or to a state of blissful detachment. Burn your incense, light your candles, sit in the lotus position and meditate your way to their version of divine nirvana. And when you get finished, reality is still there staring you in the face. Talk about a letdown. This is what Ascended Master Spirituality will bring you every time, and in the end, you have a handful of nothing but wishful thinking and unfulfilled desires and a sickeningly sweet taste of cotton candy that disappears in your mouth, leaving only a bad aftertaste. It strokes your hapim to the point of ecstasy, but doesn't do a single thing to advance your soika. It leaves you on a perpetual spiritual treadmill, the fancy kind with a TV monitor showing you exotic locations to give you the feeling that you are really there, but in the end, you are just on a fucking treadmill running in place. Welcome to the divine hamster wheel, ladies and gentlemen, the land of promises and no payoff, the land of perpetual frustration. If you are one of these sensitives that have the abilities to communicate with these other beings, try asking them some questions. I mean, some serious and probing questions, and see how they react. We are taught since our birth not to question authority, and we end up classically conditioned to not question anything, authority or not. Stand up in your sovereignty. Don't let the hapim or your emotions gauge your intuitions. Don't let emotions govern how you process and perceive information. Intuitive knowings from our second cognition experiences are never accompanied by an emotion. If these beings make you feel emotional, especially happy or ecstatic, you need to question the fuck out of why they are making you feel that way to convey their messages. There is no feel-good emotions in truth. Truth stands on its own. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you for spending your time with me and taking your time to listen to Attaining the Second Cognition. It is greatly appreciated. I extend my gratitude and my heartfelt thanks to any and to all who take the time to open their minds and search for the truth and to push forward in their own cognitive advancement and willful evolution. Once again, thank you so much. This is Doug Michael, and until next time, walk in peace.